Welcome to Lead Different.
What happens when laughter becomes a leadership tool? Today on the Lead Different podcast, we're going to be joined by Jenny Locklin, professional speaker, speaking skills coach, and the #1 undercover speaker in the world. Jenny believes humor isn't just about getting people to laugh. It can reduce stress, create connection, open people up to new ideas, and increase energy and productivity. She shares why you don't have to be naturally funny to bring more humor into your leadership, and how simply learning to notice the funny moments around you can strengthen your humor muscle. We're also going to explore Jenny's powerful philosophy. Find out what everyone else is doing and don't do it. Don't compete, create. Her unique undercover speaker experiences turn ordinary events into unexpected, memorable moments that catch audiences off guard, create genuine connection, and deliver a powerful mental reset. Get ready for a conversation about leadership, resilience, creativity, and why sometimes the best way to lead different is to bring a little more laughter into the room. Subscribe and join us as we discover what it means to lead different with Jenny Locklin. Let's dive in.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Welcome to the show, Jenny. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. It's so great to have you on the Lead Different podcast. You know, we had your dad on and we had such a great time talking to Joel Weldon, but you're a superstar in this space all on your own. I've got to tell you guys, if you haven't followed Jenny Locklin on LinkedIn, on any of the social media platforms, please do. She's full of humor, full of fun. And, you know, in the pre-show, that's what we were talking about, Jenny, how much fun it is to follow you and how much fun it must be to do the work that you do. And for those of you that, you know, that didn't pay attention during the introduction, Jenny brings humor to leadership. And I just love following you and your adventures, all the different things that you do. Jenny, why is humor so important to leadership?
Well, that's a great question. And you might be wondering, first of all, what are the benefits of humor, right? And so you might already know this, but when you laugh, even just giggle, right? Just a lighthearted laughter, it is a natural antidepressant. It strengthens your immune system. It helps you sleep better. Of course, obviously, when you are in a room, let's say you are in a team meeting and there's laughter, there's instant connection. You've probably felt the chemistry in the room shift when there is humor, right? And also, the biggest benefit humor does is it opens your listeners' ears and mind up for new ideas, right? If you can get somebody laughing, they are so much more willing to listen to you. And but sometimes leaders, people will say, well, I'm not funny, so what am I going to do? So I don't know if that was a question you want me to answer, but that is a common question, right? What do you do if you don't consider yourself a funny person?
Yeah, no, I would love for you to talk about that. So, because so many of us struggle, right? And you have a natural gift for it. I'm always amazed by people who have a gift for, because we all think of funny things, but then when we tell them, maybe they don't come across as funny. So those are the people that tell you, I'm not funny, Jenny. How can I bring humor to what I do? So how do you answer that question when someone says, Jenny, I'm just not funny?
Yeah. Well, I don't really believe that, because I think we all are funny, right? To someone in our lives, right? I mean, even if it's to your dog. And think about the easiest way to bring more humor into your life is to notice humor. I don't think of myself as a funny person. I think of myself as a person who has a good sense of humor. I find a lot of things funny. And my husband always says, "You're so easily entertained by the same thing," which is very convenient for our marriage.
Right.
Right? I'm easily entertained. And I think that's something that maybe as you're listening, maybe you can wrap your head around is can you be more easily entertained by the little things in your life and specifically yourself? Because if you can start to strengthen, it's like a muscle, right? Just going
Hmm.
to the gym. It's the humor muscle. And so if you can start to pause and say, what is something about myself that I cannot change? And oftentimes, annoying and frustrating, painful moments can actually be your greatest source of humor if you give yourself, if you have that perspective and if you give yourself enough time. So, for instance, like think back when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
Maybe something happened that was really embarrassing or maybe painful or maybe got in trouble at school, right? And you were in a lot of trouble with your parents and it was not funny.
Right.
But now time has passed and it's maybe a story that you tell your friends or your family and they
Hmm.
laugh because it's like, okay, time has passed. We know you're okay and it's funny now.
Right.
And a lot of comedians, you might have heard this formula that pain plus time equals comedy.
Hmm.
Pain plus time equals comedy. And it doesn't have, it could be something very painful, or it could just be, something embarrassing happened when you were younger or just yesterday, right? You give yourself enough time, you find some humor. But the first step is can you have a little sense of humor about yourself? Can you give yourself a little grace? You as a leader, you maybe make a mistake. You say something to a team member. You do something in your personal life that you're like, really and you might find yourself getting beating yourself up. But
Right.
can you give it a little like, okay, I'm sure other people have said, we all have said to the woman, when are you due? And she's
Oh,
not pregnant. We've all had those moments where we call someone the wrong name. We send a text by accident, right? These are all things we all do. And can you just kind of give yourself a little grace and give
right.
yourself a little, can you laugh about it? Then once you can start to kind of find humor, like for instance, you mentioned my dad, you interviewed my dad, Joel Weldon, earlier this
Right.
about a little while ago. And he's 84 years old. So one of the things he makes fun of about himself is his age. And he has some
Right.
humor about his age because nobody's going to get upset, right? Is if you're a leader and you're using self-deprecating humor. I don't think anyone's ever going to come up to you, Dan, and say, "I didn't like the way you were making fun of, your." No one's going to say that, right?
Right.
So it's safe. We got to be. We want to, as leaders, we want to make sure that we know our audience, right?
Right.
So for me, I make fun of, I love Zoom because you can't tell how short I am. I'm only 5 feet tall. So in person, I have some humor about being short. And
Hmm.
there's always someone in the audience that's short, and enough people know short people. There's connection there, right? So can you make fun of, maybe you have an accent, maybe you have funny hair, maybe you're really tall, maybe you've been married 7 times, I don't know, whatever it is,
Yeah.
can you give yourself a little grace and laugh about that?
Hmm.
And then once you can laugh at things in your about yourself, you start to notice things throughout the day that are like, oh, that's kind of funny. You
Right.
know, it's kind of, we all have experienced this when you get a new car, right?
Hmm.
We know this story. You buy a new red Honda, right? And then all of a sudden, what happens? Everyone on the
Red
road
Hondas
has a red
everywhere,
Honda,
right?
right? Yes, it's that whole awareness thing because it wasn't like everyone ran out and bought red
Hmm.
Hondas. It was because now you're aware of it, you're thinking
Right.
about it, you're looking for it.
Yeah.
And so the same thing.
Reticular activating system, right?
Exactly. I was gonna say that, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to get all, but reticulating activating system, right? And it's that part of the brain.
Right.
But the same thing can happen in looking for humor. Just
Right.
like you can look for things that are annoying. If you look for things that are annoying, you're going to find them. If
Yep.
you look for things that are going to worry you, if you look for things that stress you out, you're going to
You can
find
find
them.
them.
But
Right.
maybe wake up, just try tomorrow. When you wake up tomorrow, say, I'm just going to look to see if there's anything remotely funny or entertaining in my day to day.
Yeah.
And you will be surprised. And the more you start looking and the more you start finding it, the more you see it everywhere. And that will strengthen your humor muscle.
Yeah.
So does that make sense and
That
helpful?
answers the question so well. And Jenny, you do such a great job because that's such a big leadership principle. You get what you look for, right? That's why the reticular activating system is so important. I was talking, I was listening to a podcast recently about marriage, right? And marriage is difficult. You're married. You talked about you and your husband have these conversations. If you look for the faults in your spouse, you're going to find faults. But if you look for the gifts, you're going to see the gifts. If you listen to stuff that talks about how horrible marriage is and what a pain it is, then that's what you're gonna see. But if you listen to people who are happily married and who talk about their spouses with great reverence and have fun with them, like you're talking about your husband finds the humor in you and how you find humor in just about anything, that's what you're going to find. So even what you're talking about, even though we're talking about humor, is a great leadership principle. Look for those things. And that's why we write goals down, right? If we write our goals down, if we say, hey, we're going to be a really funny podcast, or we're going to bring a podcast that brings value to people, all of a sudden you start seeing people, ooh, Jenny could bring value to my podcast because she can talk about leadership in a funny way. And I loved having fun while learning about leadership. So we're so glad you're here, Jenny. How did you get here? I know you have a great dad. So and we've already had him on the podcast. So let's not talk about Joel, but how did you end up being a undercover speaker and you get to make a living making people laugh and doing corporate gigs? Tell us just a little bit about your journey, where you started, where did some of the great stories come from, and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, well, this is something I did learn from my dad, Joel Weldon, as you mentioned, and he learned this from his mentor. If you're old enough to know the name Earl
Oh, yeah.
Nightingale was the dean of personal development way back
Hmm.
when. And what he taught my dad, and then my dad taught me, is find out what everyone else is doing and don't do it.
Mm,
Find out what everyone else is doing and don't do it. And then he would also say, don't compete, create.
yes.
And so think about in your own business, in your own life, you might be doing something in your business that, let's say you're a coach and all the other coaches are saying you got to do this way, or you're a
Right.
speaker, right? Um, and just take a second and pause and say, is that really true? Do I really have to do what everyone else is doing? And so it kind of happened with me when I was speaking.
Hmm.
I was noticing that the leader or the MC, the person introducing me, would
Yeah.
say to the group, "Okay, folks, get ready. This is going to be fun. You're going to laugh. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is so funny." Well, and then I realized this is not benefiting them because you have those expectations that something's going to be so funny and so fun. You're,
Right.
well, that wasn't really very funny. That wasn't really very fun. And so I thought, how can I still deliver a message about the power of a sense of humor and
Right.
still have all of us laughing and having fun while learning, but not set it up
Hmm.
with those expectations. And so I came up with the very first talk I tried this out. It was a CPA, and she had her accountants. They were doing a retreat, and she was going to introduce like, oh, this is going to be so fun. I said, no, no, let's do something else. Why don't you introduce me as one of your clients, and I've been working with your team, and I'm there to give a testimonial. But she had a big team, so it wasn't, I could have been working with Susan
Someone,
and you
yeah, they
wouldn't
wouldn't
know,
know.
right?
Right.
Yeah. And so I came up with and I checked with her, are you okay with this? We're going to do a pretend opening, and then I'll punk them, and then I'll reveal the truth. And
Right.
so I came out and I gave this testimonial, and it started legit. Like, I'm just so grateful to this team. My business is just so much financially so much better. And then I went into all these illegal, horrible things like, I haven't paid taxes since 2018. She taught me I could have two sets of books. We went to Cabo. We got so drunk talking
Yeah.
about business. I said all this very
And
not inappropriate.
it was all deductible, right?
Right. It was all deductible.
We have it, we had 2 million in income last year and no net revenue. It was amazing.
Yeah. And and I noticed that they went from kind of at the very, very beginning, not really totally connected and paying attention to like, wait, what? Kind
Right.
of leaning in and then looking at each other like, well, which one of these people that on my team is working with this person? And then I revealed the truth, and
Right.
they were like, "Oh my gosh!" And they were laughing
And they're so
together.
relieved.
They were so relieved. They were so relieved. And then we went into the message of, a lot of things like, what do you do when things don't go as planned? Or
Right.
can you have a sense of humor? And I thought, oh, that was so much better for their benefit because
Right.
they were expecting ordinary and boring and dull and dry. And they went and it totally caught them off guard. And then it was totally customized to them,
Right.
right? And that's kind of when I realized that's a great example of find out what everyone else is doing and don't do it. So think about your own business, not that you have to do some, you know, prank, but make a list, and maybe this is helpful. Make a list of the things that you're not loving about the results you're getting in your business. And like for me, it was I didn't like that expectation at the beginning.
Right.
And so I thought, how can I still do 90% of that talk, but fix the part that I don't like, that's not
Right.
working for them. So
Hmm.
do the same thing, write a list, and then ask yourself, what can I do that's different? And then just,
Right.
try it out, see how it works, and you might be really surprised. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I just did something no other, coach is doing in the space of, mindset
Right.
and
And leadership or yeah,
leadership.
whatever your niche is. No, I really like what you said with regards to there's two rules. So guys, these are the two rules you have to remember. Find out what everyone else is doing and don't do it, right? So that find what's different and then don't compete, create. Because
Yeah.
when you create, and that's so beautiful. I've been talking a lot of leaders that I bring on sometimes have a faith message, and one guy said, literally, he asked God every morning, God, what are we going to go co-create today? So imagine having, the ultimate power helping you co-create, right? And that's what you're talking about. Create something that's not competing. We're creating something, and that's tapping really into our gifts, what it is that we bring that's different to the world. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also when you're thinking about it, think of it for both aspects, for the benefit of your client or your
Yes.
audience, right? And then benefit to you. But if you can start with what's the benefit to them first, and then and just be willing to be patient and kind of tweak it a little bit. Just try. I guess that would be the other thing is, you know, give yourself permission to try. When I did that the very first time, I had a good feeling about it, but I thought, it's just a few minutes. So let's
Yeah.
just say if it bombs, I know it's still going to be great for them because the 95% of it after that, I know is going to work. And
Right.
it didn't bomb, it was great. And
Yeah.
so, you can kind of set things up like that for yourself so you feel confident in trying something new
Hmm.
and creating something unique.
And I love that, a lot of programs, they have their agenda way ahead of time and they want to know who is the keynote speaker, who are you bringing in. So you have to do a lot of work ahead of time with your conference coordinators to make sure they don't blow your cover, right? Because, oh, we're going to have a keynote by one of our clients, or we're going to have, because I think you do Undercover. Give us the range of characters you've played as you use this technique on different stages. I know have you spoken to a medical association and been a patient or a doctor? Tell us some of the roles you've
Yeah.
pretended to be.
Yeah, I have. And that was one of the earliest ones as well. And it was for a back fit health and spine. So I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and there is
Right,
a company, they have several locations, and it's like a chiropractor slash physical therapy
right.
type business.
Okay,
And so they introduced me, well, they said, I told them, okay, you're going to say, before we move on with the rest of our agenda, you all work so hard. So it was all their staff. It was a whole staff training, like
right.
200 people. You all work so hard, and rarely do you get the appreciation that you deserve.
Hmm.
If we do hear from someone or a review, sometimes it's negative because people don't take the time to say positive. But you all work so hard. You deserve to be appreciated. And we actually have a patient who has had such an amazing experience at the Chandler, Arizona location with Dr. John, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
And she's here just to share a few words before we move on with the rest of the agenda. And so I came on and it was, again, know your audience. Okay.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting this works with every corporate company, but for this particular group, they were not a conservative group. So I said, I'm so grateful. I had some terrible tennis elbow. I had this terrible tennis elbow, and I went into backfit health and spine. And Dr. John and Sierra, they were helping me, and they did that the thermogun on my inner thigh. And I tell you, that thermogun on that inner thigh, it really, really helped. And I kept going back. They had me keep coming back. Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. It was years ago. It was
Sure,
years ago.
sure.
But basically, I said, they're looking around going, why would why would they use a thermogun? Which, if you know what a thermogun is, it's that massage
Yeah,
gun.
that vibrating
Yeah,
gun,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And Jenny loved it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I became a lifetime patient. No,
Yeah.
and so I can't really remember all the details, but I went into and I did it customized because I found out a little bit about them. And again, it was kind of like, what in the world? And then there was, laughter, and it revealed. But I've also showed up there was a DJ company that has 16 DJs
Yeah.
that work at weddings and special events. Great. This couple owns a DJ
Right.
company, and they were having their big employee appreciation event. And their tagline says, "We are not responsible for any aches and pains resulting from dancing too much."
Right.
Right? Because they want, obviously,
It
DJs
looks
want
like they should
money.
pair up with the health company,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
if you do, we know where to
Right.
send you, right?
Right. So they want success. To them is a lot of people dancing on the dance floor. The worst thing for a DJ is no one gets out on the dance floor.
Sure.
So the owner said, before we move on with the rest of the agenda, we have somebody here. Lisa is here. She wrote me this handwritten thank you note. She's actually gone to 3 different weddings from our DJs, and she just attended her niece's wedding, and she just wanted to share a few words. Well, I come out with a neck brace, a back brace. I'm on like one of those, those scooters when
Oh,
you
yes. Yeah. For when you injure your knee so you can't put your foot down.
and
Yes.
I've got a boot, on my foot
Hmm.
and everything. And everyone's looking at me like, oh my God. And I said, I had the best time. I was known as the fun aunt, all these broken bones and my neck, all the surgery. It was all worth it. And then eventually I start taking it off, And then I started dancing and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh." And it was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
the point is, let's talk about the point for you as you're listening, because you're not going to pretend that you're these crazy people, most
Right.
likely. So what can you do? And I think the biggest thing is these leaders,
Hmm.
right, that wanted to bring some fun to their team or their meeting or their event, they they valued having fun. And so as you're listening, ask yourself, how can you add just a little bit more fun into your meeting, into your event? And if you're thinking, well, we don't really have time for that, because that's the
Hmm.
other thing that we hear, right? We don't have time for fluff and fun. We have so many things to do. We need to be productive.
Right.
But do you
You
think
make
that, right? I mean,
Well, it's about increasing productivity, right? You talk about all the benefits of humor. There's health benefits to humor. There's the bonding benefit. When we laugh together, we create a bond with the people that we laugh with, and that leads to increased energy, increased productivity.
yeah,
If you can kick off your meeting with some humor, then you're adding energy to that room for the rest of the day, right? And if you
yeah.
can keep it, give little shots of it throughout the day, it's even better. And I'm sure throughout the day, people reference you, Lisa, as if you kick off, if you're at a meeting that Jenny has kicked off, people are going to enjoy. Did I call you Lisa? Because you just used Lisa as a character name. So if Jenny kicks off your meeting, you're going to refer to her throughout the meeting because it's going to be something memorable and fun that people do. Back to the origin story. I would love to hear from you. I think our listeners would love to hear. You talked about looking for humor. One of the things I've learned is, if I'm looking for humor, I listen to comedy. I'll go on YouTube and punch in the AGT America's Got Talent comedian winners, and you look for, okay, how do they do that? And you're really good at, the best comedians talk about they bring tension. They make you wonder, oh my gosh, where is he or she going with this? You're almost embarrassed. You're feeling that tension, and all of a sudden they throw the punchline in. Oh my God, that's funny. But I wasn't expecting that because there's that twist that humor does. Your twist is you're not really the patient that that was getting the thermal gun used on him. You're not really someone who has had everything done wrong to their accounting. You're actually someone who is there to entertain and kick off their meeting and show them the power of laughter, which is amazing. I love the way you do that, Jenny. Tell us about growing up. When did you find out that you, first of all, let's tell everybody your Y operating system, just because we have so many coaches and people who listen to the show who've done the YOS. Jenny is challenge, better way, and contribute. So what we know about Jenny based on the assessment, the YOS discovery, she loves to challenge the status quo and think differently. And like we haven't already heard that enough. We just in the first few stories we've heard, she doesn't believe in doing things the way everyone else does them. And then how she challenges the status quo is finding better ways. So she's always looking for better ways to do things. And ultimately, what she wants to do is contribute to the greater cause and to the success of her clients. So when we know that about you, if you look back, when do you say to yourself, you know what, I knew I was going to end up doing a completely different career than all my friends and the friends who became librarians and teachers and doctors and nurses and lawyers. I knew I was going to be different because this happened.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that you said, sometimes when you're young, you dream of being a firefighter, a nurse,
Right.
a doctor, a movie star, right? I don't ever really remember wanting to be anything in particular.
Hmm.
And maybe and when I was in high school, I
Yeah.
do know this, my senior year, if you went to when you were in high school, oftentimes they'll give like awards out,
Right.
most likely, best looking, most likely to be a billionaire, most
Right.
likely to succeed, whatever, Nobel
Right.
Peace Prize, best athlete. And
Yeah.
I didn't get any of those. The only award that I got, and at the time I was kind of like embarrassed, but I've grown to appreciate it. And I got the Best Laugh Award.
Mm.
And and I remember thinking, and my dad said that's a really great award. I thought, what are you talking about? What's so
Hmm.
great about that? And if you think about it, laughter is one of the greatest ways to stay resilient.
Right.
And it really can save you. You have been in a moment where you are experiencing something so painful or so
Yeah.
challenging, and you might be crying, you might be breaking down, just grieving over something. And then someone says something, and then all of a sudden you have this laughter.
Hmm.
And I tell people, two things can be true at the same time. And I want to make this clear because I think a lot of times people, when they're going through a difficult time, or maybe someone passed away, or they're going through a very, very painful moment, they
Right.
don't think it's maybe appropriate to laugh. But two things can be true at the same time.
Hmm.
You can be going through a very challenging time and find the humor.
Yeah.
You can be grieving and you can find some laughter, right? You can be
Hmm.
totally in love with your husband and totally annoyed with them, right?
Right.
These both
Right.
things can happen at the same time. And so, back to when you said as a child,
Yeah.
and
When did you say,
yeah,
I'm gonna do something different?
well, I kind of, and maybe as you're listening, maybe this is you. I didn't do that right away. When
Yeah.
I went to college, I did what I was supposed to do, right? I went to college, I got my teaching degree, I was a teacher, and I liked it. I thought it was a great job. I didn't feel like I wasn't doing the right job for me. I was an elementary PE teacher, and that means I was teaching kindergarten, so 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it was really the only job I could find where I was not the shortest person in the room. So I thought this
Yes.
is a really good job for me. And I loved it. And then I got pregnant and I had my daughter and I stopped teaching.
Right.
And then I dipped my toes in a bunch of other things. And if you're listening, maybe this was you, right? Our path, we go off the path, we find stuff over here, but we're still building those skills, even though you might not feel like you are.
Right.
And then one thing leads to another, and I no longer was teaching, and I got involved in Toastmasters International. Toastmasters is a public speaking and leadership organization.
Right. And I wonder who led you to that? Well, who might you have known that was a
Yeah,
member of
yeah, my dad,
Toastmasters?
that's how my dad got started. And it's a
Yeah.
it's a really great organization. There's all the different kinds of clubs. So you go to one, you might not be impressed. You have to visit several to find
Right.
a good one. But and so my point is I feel like I'm getting kind of a late start in what I really love and feel like I'm making a difference, but it doesn't matter. If
Right.
you are in that same boat where you're feeling like I want to try something completely different, I want to shift careers, or maybe you found something you love and you're
Right.
not in your 20s, it's okay. In fact, I don't know about you, Dan, but I have found that people you almost inspire it's almost more inspiring to others when you're
Hmm.
older and you try something new, because so many times we don't do this, right? My dad's
Yeah.
84, going to be 85, and he's writing his first book.
Yeah.
And I think that's really inspiring. And
That's pretty
you
cool.
might think, well, oh, I should have written this book 10 years ago. No, it's never too late.
Well, maybe you should have, but you could start now, right? Like they say, the
Right,
best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time is today, right? So, yeah,
right.
maybe you should have written it 10 years ago, but you can start it today.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
so I guess that's the point, is as you get older, you start, I know you're very big on being self-aware, learning
Right.
about yourself. And I think that's really the key, is you start learning about yourself. If you've had failed businesses or experiences, it all is adding
Right.
to the program, right?
Yeah. Well, it's making you who you are today. Who you are today is a combination of everything that's ever happened to you. Those experiences, those failed talks that you gave, those introductions where somebody probably overhyped you, and then you're trying to be as funny as you can, and you're like, that doesn't work. But that had to happen in order for you to gain that awareness that said, you know what if we tried something different? You brought a twist to it, and now it's your formula. It's the Jenny Locklin formula for having a great kickoff to your meeting. And I love that for you, and I love that for your audiences. What's been your most challenging audience? I'd love to hear, what's an audience where you were, I don't know, maybe you were morticians, and maybe you pretended you were someone that came back after being involved improperly. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about what's your most challenging audience you ever had.
Hmm. Let's see. The most challenging audience. Well, okay, I'll tell you this one and then I'll give you the actual answer. One
Okay.
suggestion, if you do any speaking, and again, I learned this from my dad, Joel Weldon. If you do any speaking, and that's even if you're speaking to your team, you're a leader and you're
Right.
speaking to the team, highly, highly, highly recommend you always use an anonymous feedback form
Hmm.
about 95% of the way, 95% where you have done 95% of the meeting and you have 5% left of it to
Yeah.
conclude the meeting. And you say, we're going to do anonymous feedback. I want to know how this could be even, we want to make these even better for you. And it's
Right.
three simple questions. Okay, the first question is, and the reason why it's anonymous is because if you're, let's say you're leading a team meeting and
Yeah.
your team loves you, right? They
Yeah.
really love you, but there's something you're doing
Hmm.
that is could be improved.
Yeah.
They if they know they have to put their email, they're not going to most likely be very honest
Right.
because they don't want to hurt your feelings because they like you.
Yep.
And so if you do anonymous and you just say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best meeting, 1 being the worst meeting, shouldn't have even come, okay, just rate that. Then the second question is, what did you like about the session or the
Hmm.
training or meeting? And then the third question is, and this is the gold, this is where the gold is, what could have been improved?
Right.
Right? And then this is where your team is going to, or your audience is going to be able
Hmm.
to honestly, and when you get that feedback, that is because no one else is going to tell, you don't know, right? So
Right.
so going back to the toughest audience, I remember speaking to some, it was a it was a realtor group here in Arizona, and they were all realtors. And I
Right.
remember speaking, it was right after COVID, and I remember looking out. And have you ever been speaking and you look at the audience and you're getting a lot of RBF, like,
Hmm.
dirty, almost dirty look, kind of confused look, and you
Like,
look
why
at
are you
the
here? Why are you wasting my time?
right,
I'd rather be at the doctor's office getting the massage.
right. You're
I'd rather
getting
have a tooth pulled than be here.
yes, yes, and you're getting this vibe that, oh my gosh, this is not going well. They're
Right.
not connecting. They're giving me dirty looks. This is not going well. And you start to tell yourself this story of how badly this is going,
Yeah.
and I'm never going to do this again, and I'm never going to speak to realtors again, and I'm this is a terrible audience, right?
Yeah.
But that day I used anonymous feedback like I always do. And it was I was shocked. I looked at the scores and it was like, not, I don't remember the exact score, but out of 1 to 10, it was like a 9.2 or something like that
Nice.
average.
Yeah.
And I thought, what in the world? And that's when I learned, and there were so many positive comments, like, got so much value out of this. And I'm thinking, how could that be? You didn't look like you were having any fun, right?
Right.
But the point is that our minds can tell us these stories.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are just thinking, they're in deep thought,
Right.
right? And they're kind of processing what you're saying. They don't know that their face is maybe not looking happy. And I'm so grateful that I did feedback cards that day because I would have left and thought, never again. So
Right.
if you run a meeting, if you do any kind of speaking, always use the anonymous. You can do a QR code or whatever, because I guarantee you, especially when you first start out,
Yeah.
your mind is gonna lie to you that you bombed, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned it very early on as we were talking, pain plus time equals comedy. You can make fun of anything that's in the past, right? If enough time has passed for you to heal from the trauma or the emotional damage that was done from whatever happened to you, it's actually really funny, right? It's horribly embarrassing when it happens to you, but when you think about it, when you reply all to a message and you include your boss and you tell all you think you're telling your friend, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of these emails, and you've actually replied to everyone in the company. Those are, mortifying when you do it, but they're so funny when you think about them later, right?
Yes.
And so you find that humor in the pain. I love the concept of that.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to share with you. Here's another suggestion as a leader to create even more connection, even more trust, even more respect,
Yeah.
is I created something called a mistake break.
Mm.
And you can do this with your team. You could do this with your family if you want. And it works really well on virtual because as long as you have cameras on. And a
Yeah.
mistake break, and how I run it, and I've done it for teams or
Yeah.
companies, and I say, you have three choices. You can come to the call and you can share a mistake that you have made that you think would help someone on this call. It could be a personal or professional mistake. You have a second option. You can just sit back, relax, and learn from everyone else's mistake, and you don't have to share anything. And then the third option is if nobody wants to share a mistake, I have made enough in my own life to carry us through the call.
Right.
Okay. And the key is as a leader, you go first. And
Yeah.
so whenever I start this, I always say, just go in. If you feel like you have a mistake, a couple minutes, we don't want to go really long because we want to make sure everyone has enough time to share if they want.
Yeah.
If you think you have a mistake you want to share, just go in the chat, and I always have like a co-host,
Right.
have Megan, and Megan will keep an eye on the chat box, and then we'll know who's up next. And
Yep.
I'll start. And so what's interesting is when I do this at the beginning of the call, like no one is raising their hand saying, I have a mistake I want to share. They're just
Right.
all kind of in their mind saying, I think I'll just listen. And then once I've shared one or two, it opens up the door,
Yeah.
right? And by
Hmm.
the end of the call, we have so many. Oh, I just thought of another one. Oh, is there time? I do have one I'd like to share.
Yeah.
And what it does is now some people share mistakes that are funny and we end
Yeah.
up laughing.
Right.
And some people share mistakes that are, they're pretty emotional when they're
Yeah.
telling them. And that is just amazing as well.
Hmm.
And so as a leader, you can, if you're running a meeting with your team or your colleagues and you say, we're going to do this, we're going to try it out, maybe 30 minutes, I'll start. And you will be amazed at how the level of trust and and humanness that this
Yeah.
creates.
That is so good. I have a big workshop that I'm running with some hospital CEOs. I'm gonna have like 24 people in the room. 12 of them are hospital CEOs and 12 of them are area directors for a big health system. So it's going to be a serious crowd. I really like that idea. And I love the way you framed it, Jenny. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership. And I don't know if you've ever read it or heard him on podcast, but he was a Navy SEAL. And he
Mm,
talks about scenarios where mistakes are made and how as a leader you can set the tone. So in the military, I was in the military also, we always have after action reviews. And at the after action review, you review, okay, this was the plan. This is what happened. So never exactly what you planned. And then this is what we learned, right? So these are the three key things we want to capture. But they had a situation in his situation where they had friendly fire. So they had killed some of their own troops. So that's a pretty big mistake. People are gonna, it's a serious after action review, and there are going to be consequences for the people that were in charge. And he said, what he did that set the tone is he got up there first and he said, "Hey, I'm the commanding officer. I am in charge of responsible for everything that happened. So I want to let you guys know that anything that went wrong is my fault. And so when you
Mm.
start there, then all of a sudden you have people just like you talked about, people competing with, say, wait a minute, I didn't communicate. So it's not all your fault, sir. I was in charge of radio communications and I had my radio on the wrong channel. And so we weren't able to hear. And then somebody else will say, well, wait a minute. I was in charge of identifying the targets. And so
Mm.
instead of pointing fingers, which is what people would normally do, and when something goes really bad, everybody's taking ownership. And so
Yeah.
you're using that same concept by saying, you as the leader, why don't you share a mistake? And then all of a sudden, by the end, everybody's sharing their mistakes. And that's exactly what was happening in this very serious post failed operation to
Yeah.
learn, because that's how we learn, right? We still, at the end of the day, what did we learn, right? We
Right.
make sure our radios are on the right channel. We want to make sure we communicate who our targets are. We want to make sure we're communicating with each other. All those things don't come out if we start by pointing fingers, because then people get defensive, right? Oh, it was Jenny's fault. Jenny didn't have the radio on the right frequency. Wait a minute. You
Yeah.
did. You gave me an old radio from 1978,
Yeah.
right? And it just all goes back and forth, and it sets the tone so well. I really, really like that idea, Jenny. What's I always like to ask questions that bring us back to what's the best advice anyone's given you with regards to being funny or creating fun on stage for your clients, while and then bringing it back to what you really do, which is teach leaders how to lead
Mm.
different and better through the power of humor.
Mm. Well, I think one of the tips that's very easy to use is, how many times have you gone to, if you've ever gone to a comedy club,
Yeah,
right? And you've seen a really great comedian. Sometimes at a comedy club, there'll be like the host and then a
right,
feature and then the headliner, right?
right.
Or, if you've ever seen an open mic. And
Yeah,
basically what I learned, and this is true with speaking, with running your meetings, being a leader, oftentimes people will say, "Oh, I tried to use humor and nobody laughed." And then I say, okay, let's dissect that for a minute. What did you say? And what usually happens is, if people cannot hear you, like they didn't hear the setup or they didn't hear
right,
the punchline, that's why they didn't laugh. And you could go home and tell yourself, oh my God, that line was so dumb. No one even laughed. No,
right.
actually, it was a really funny line. They didn't hear the setup or they
Hmm.
didn't hear the punchline because you swallowed your it's like, what?
Right.
You got to punch your punchline.
Yeah.
And yet when you're new at using humor, or maybe you're just, I don't know, maybe you found something on Chat GPT and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is somewhat funny. I'm going to use this line. Or you see a cartoon and you use that line. But if you don't say it with enough volume and emphasis,
Hmm.
people don't laugh, and then you lied, and then you've given yourself false information. So I think the
Right.
easiest tip would be, are you loud and are you punching your punchline?
Love
So
that.
yeah, and when you're new at it, you're not as confident. So when we know that when somebody is not 100% confident, they
Right.
might, their voice is not necessarily projecting.
Yeah.
They might be kind of holding back a little bit. They're
Hmm.
trying to, or they're talking so fast, right? They're trying to get through it really quick because they don't know if you're going to find it funny. So we're just going to say it really quick.
We're gonna say it real quick in case you don't laugh. We'll forget that I even said a joke because I
Right.
went on to the next thing, right? That I was even trying to be funny. Jenny, this is so fun. We could talk for hours. I gotta ask you, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? By the way, she's on my LinkedIn, guys. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you can find her there. She's connected to me. But what's the best way to find out more about what you do? If somebody's interested in bringing Jenny as a secret speaker, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and how can we find you?
Yes, you can go to jennylocklin.com, jennylocklin.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Jenny Locklin Speaker,
Perfect.
and then
Perfect.
LinkedIn as well. Yes.
Fantastic. This has been so much fun, guys. I hope you had as much fun listening to Jenny's stories as I had asking her to tell us more about her career and what she does and how she brings her why to life, how she helps leaders lead different through the power of self-awareness and humor. So, Jenny, this has been so fun. If you like this episode, if you learned something new from Jenny, put it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends. Jenny, I know you're going to share this episode with all of your network. We want as many people as possible to hear Jenny's amazing sense of humor, Jenny's great tips for how to bring humor to your talks, and how to bring Jenny to your meeting so you can have a great kickoff and she can surprise your audience. I've got to think of something fun. We've got to bring you back to Albuquerque, Jenny.
Yeah. And we'll talk about your healthcare, your 24 doctors. You know how you were saying that?
Yeah.
That's yours. Let's talk about that. We're going to come up with some fun ways you can add some fun to that group, because healthcare is a group that needs some levity.
Yes. Well, you brought levity to accountants. I mean, if you can make accountants laugh, my accountant says, Dan, you know how you can tell an extroverted accountant from an introverted accountant? I said, how? He said, the extrovert looks at other people's shoes because they're so quiet. They're so, tightly wound. Most of them. There are a lot of fun ones, and so we just have to find them. But it's a serious business, right? We're trying to keep people from getting audited and from going to jail, like you might have had your story actually been true. Jenny, this has been so fun. Thank you so much. I know we have to have a follow-up call. First of all, we're gonna talk more about you, but yes, I want to talk to you before my program's in 2 weeks, so I definitely want to make sure we have a follow-up call. But for now, what do you say we end the show on that note and send our viewers off with a smile?
Why not?
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you, Joel Weldon, for having a great daughter. Thank you, Jenny, for being an amazing guest. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Lead Different podcast. We'll be back next Friday with a new episode. And don't forget to go follow Jenny on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And where else did you say?
JennyLocklin.com.
And JennyLocklin.com. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.